Your ancestors had no smartphones, no high-speed internet, no streaming services, and no algorithmic notification systems designed to hijack their attention every 11 minutes. By every modern standard of entertainment and stimulation, their daily lives were almost unbearably quiet. If you were transported back to the late 19th century today, you would likely find the silence agonizing. But here is the paradox that neuroscience is only now beginning to understand. Your ancestors, despite having less to stimulate them, were fundamentally more capable of sustained focus, deep motivation, and genuine psychological satisfaction than the average person living in the digital age. Your great-great-grandfather could sit by a window for 4 hours, working on a single complex task or reading a dense philosophical text and feel a deep sense of peace. You, on the other hand, struggle to get through a 4-minute video without your hand instinctively drifting toward the device in your pocket. You start a book, and your brain begins to itch for a notification by page 3. You feel a constant underlying anxiety digital shadow that suggests that whatever you are doing right now, something more interesting is happening somewhere else. This is not a character flaw. You aren't lazy, and you aren't weak-willed. What you are is a biological victim of a massive evolutionary mismatch. You are running 200,000-year-old brain software on a modern environment that has been engineered by the world's smartest people to exploit every single one of your brain's vulnerabilities. Something has happened to your neurochemistry, and it happened so quietly that you've started to believe this state of perpetual distraction is just your personality. But it's not. It is a biological hijack. And to reclaim your mind, we have to look at the chemistry of the pursuit. To understand the 1%, we have to dismantle the biggest myth in modern psychology, the idea that dopamine is the pleasure chemical. Most people think dopamine is the feeling you get when you eat a sugar-loaded donut or win a jackpot. But neuroscience reveals a much more haunting reality. Dopamine is not about the reward, it is about the anticipation of the reward. It is the molecule of more. In the wild, dopamine was the survival fuel. It was the neurochemical signal that told your ancestors, the hunt is almost over, keep moving, don't stop. It made the wanting feel so intense that they were willing to endure hours of physical effort. For 99% of human history, dopamine was a scarce resource. You had to earn it through physical labor, social cooperation, or intellectual problem solving. The gap between the desire and the delivery was wide, and that gap was where human character was built. In the modern world, that gap has been systematically closed to zero. You want novelty, you scroll. You want social validation, you post. You want a hit of sugar, you click an app. When you flood your brain with effortless, high-intensity dopamine thousands of times a day, your brain does something called downregulation. Think of it like a safety fuse in an electrical circuit. To protect your neurons from being fried by overstimulation, your brain literally reduces the number of dopamine receptors it has. This is why modern life starts to feel flat. Your baseline has been pushed so far down that normal, slow-paced activities, like reading a book, walking in nature, or having a deep conversation, don't provide enough stimulation to even register. You aren't bored because the world is boring. You are bored because your brain is currently deaf to low-level joy. You have built a high-tolerance brain in a low-intensity world. Let's look at the texture of the 19th century. This was an era of unprecedented intellectual achievement. Charles Darwin didn't have a search engine. He spent years on the HMS Beagle and then decades in his home, observing barnacles and birds. He let ideas marinate in years of silence. Michael Faraday uncovered the secrets of electromagnetism without a single digital distraction. The difference wasn't that they were biologically superior to you. The difference was the texture of their lives. Their environment was analog and high friction. If they wanted information, they had to walk to a library, physically find a book, and read for hours. If they wanted to talk to a friend, they had to write a letter, send it, and wait weeks for a reply. This friction wasn't a burden. It was a biological shield that kept their dopamine receptors highly sensitive. Because your ancestors experienced regular, sustained periods of boredom, their brains were forced to turn the seeking drive inward. They generated their own questions, their own curiosity, and their own entertainment. This is the secret of the 1%. Focus is not about trying hard. It's about having a brain that is sensitive enough to find a complex problem interesting. When you remove the cheap exit, your phone, your brain is forced to dive deeper into the only thing available. Deep work is the natural result of an environment that doesn't offer cheap escapes. Human beings are biologically loop-closing creatures. Throughout history, human tasks had a clear beginning, a middle, and an absolute end. You plowed the field, you finished the harvest, you built the table. When you close a loop, your brain releases a specific healthy type of dopamine combined with serotonin. This is the neurochemistry of satisfaction. It tells your body, the job is done. You can rest now. But look at the architecture of the modern internet. The infinite scroll is exactly what it sounds like, a loop that is engineered to never close. There is no end to the news feed. There is no end to the suggested videos. There is no end to the likes on a post. You are kept in a permanent state of seeking dopamine without ever reaching the state of arrival, satisfaction. This keeps your brain in a state of permanent, low-grade frustration. This is why you can spend 4 hours on social media and feel more exhausted and more lonely than when you started. You are running a biological system on an infinite loop that it was never designed to handle. Your ancestors knew when the day was done. You don't. You are living in a completion deficit, and it is eating your focus from the inside out. You cannot go back to the 19th century, and you shouldn't want to, but you must borrow its wisdom if you want to survive the digital age. Reclaiming your focus is not about willpower, it is about architecture. You must reintroduce friction into your life. Protect your boredom like your ancestors protected fire. When you are standing in a queue or waiting for a friend, do not reach for your phone. Let your brain sit in the silence. It will feel painful at first. That is literally the feeling of your dopamine receptors recalibrating. It is the sound of your brain healing. Stop checking your phone the moment you wake up. By spiking your dopamine the second you open your eyes, you are setting a high threshold for the rest of the day, making everything else feel boring. Move your body as a non-negotiable. Physical movement is the only way to reset the dopamine baseline naturally. And finally, finish things. Close the loops, write a page, finish a chapter, do the laundry, give your brain the satisfaction hit it was evolved to crave. The 1% are not the ones who have the most information. In a world of infinite data, information is a commodity. The 1% are the ones who have the most control over their own attention. Your ancestors left you a blueprint for a focused, meaningful life. They didn't have focus apps or productivity hacks. They simply had an environment that respected their biology. It is time to stop scrolling through their legacy and start building your own. Reclaim your focus, protect your baseline, and live at the speed of reality. The journey to mastery begins the moment you put the phone down and let your brain breathe. If this shifted something in your perspective, our next video explores the biohacking of sleep, the ultimate recovery tool used by elite performers. Until then, stay focused.